If everything can be paused, I will ask the spiritual court to put death on hold, so we can have time to breathe, and the rain of tears shall stop.
I have an appeal to the Supreme Court of Justice and Truth. Your mediation is necessary. Pause everything for a moment.
South Africans here in Ghana should start packing bag and baggage to leave this country. They should go back to their country, because what is happening is that where we have gotten to as a country, we've got to fix ourselves. We've got to fix Ghana. So fixing Ghana, we've realized that the continued presence of South Africans in Ghana will inhibit or impede a successful fixing of this country. So they should go back to their country.
As you can see, so many Africans, so many people from other part of Africa, they are now telling South Africans to pack their bags and go back to their country. Yeah. Based on what some South Africans are doing to our fellow brothers, African sisters in South Africa. Is this what we actually need in Africa? Attacking each other, telling everybody to go back to their place? Let us know in the comment section if this is what we.
I would like to begin by saying African unity is a beautiful dream, but according to my perception, it's just a bit impossible. It won't happen anytime soon. It will take approximately multiple decades to come to pass. And I believe that the children who love the truth, honesty, and accountability are not born yet. Right now, we still have a problem of hating the truth. We hate accountability and we hate honesty. That is why we are where we are. For an example, let's just say someone comes to you and they ask you for a favor. They ask you to do something for them, but you have a busy schedule, and then you are like, man, I'm willing to assist you, but the problem is that I have a busy schedule. I won't be able to help you right now. Probably later on, maybe, or after maybe a week, you can come so that I can help you, because right now I have a busy schedule. Then they go away, but deep down, they are offended. But maybe after 2 months, then it becomes the other way around. You go to them asking for help, genuinely so. But instead of helping you, they provide the same reasons you provided to them last time they came to you asking for help. You can even see that these people, they are not that busy. They can help you. It's just that they are retaliating, because last time they came to you, you gave them legit reasons why you couldn't help them. Not because you didn't want to help them, but because you had a busy schedule at that time. Now they've gotten a chance or an opportunity to retaliate. Such people don't like accountability. Such people don't like honesty. Such people don't like the truth. That is why many friendships have fallen apart. Many communities and societies have fallen apart. Why? Because we don't like the truth, accountability, and honesty. In other words, every time we talk, we want to talk like the manipulators. We want to talk like the gossipers. Because sometimes someone may come to you and say, you know what? That other family have chased me out of their house. They don't like me. They did 1, 2, 3 to me. In other words, they did evil things to me. But they won't tell you about the bad behavior they gave to those people that made them to treat them in such a way, that made them to chase them out of their house. I'm not saying it's always happening. I'm not saying it's always like that. But what I'm trying to say is that there are people who have this manipulating strategy, manipulating method. In other words, they speak like manipulators. They speak like gossipers because they always tell the side of their story. They always tell the side of their story because they don't want to be honest and say, you know what? I also contributed with my bad attitude. And that is why these people chased me out of their house. Why? Because probably I didn't listen to their rules. They told me that by 5 p.m. I should be inside the yard. But I did not obey that instruction. I was lazy. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to clean. I didn't want to do gardening. I didn't want to do anything. They won't tell you that. Why? Because they want to manipulate you. Because the moment you see them stranded, the moment you see them crying, in other words, you have to feel sorry for them. This is what is happening when it comes to the South African issue. Nobody wants to talk about the real reasons why the South Africans are behaving in this way or what South Africans are actually complaining about. Nobody wants to touch that. Why? Because they know that the moment they touch that, then your eyes will be opened. And probably you might say, no, the reasons provided by South Africans are understandable. So they don't want you to say, I understand their concerns. They don't want you to say that. So that is why they want to tell the side of their story. So that is why everybody is spreading lies to the whole world to say South Africa is xenophobic. So these lies have been there since maybe from 2008, 2009, 10, 11, until now. People are like, South Africans are xenophobic. Why? Because they don't want to talk about the real complaints that the South Africans are complaining about or the grievances that South Africans have. So they don't want to talk about all those things. Why? Because they want to protect their side of the story so that at the end of the day, they can manipulate everybody else. So that is why now they have to come forward and say, is this what we want as South Africans, as Africans? Is this what we want? We want to chase one another. This is what we want. This is based on what South Africans are doing or some South Africans are doing. Is because they want to protect their side of the story. We don't like the truth, accountability, and honesty. We have to understand one thing. Truth and accountability and honesty are very important because you'll say, I want the real context. I want the context. I want to find the root of the problem. I want to find the cause of this whole thing. So many people don't want that. Why? Because they want to manipulate you. So that is why they don't want you to hear the other side of the story. But here's the thing. They don't want you to know that the South Africans have a problem of security first. Before we can talk about businesses, before we can talk about unemployment, before we can talk about all these issues, we have a problem of security. Because here in Africa, there's not even a single country, even though these people are puppets, but there's not even a single country. You can go there and be roaming around undocumented in their own territory, in their own country. It's impossible. It can be Ghana, it can be Nigeria. You cannot go there and walk around undocumented. You cannot go there and take advantage of their constitution. It won't happen. It's impossible. In other words, if you go to Ghana, if you go to Nigeria, you have to make sure that your documentation is legit and is in accordance of the constitution of the country. In other words, if you're out there as a South African or an American or maybe somebody else, you are in those countries such as Ghana or Nigeria, you know that your documentation should be 100%. But when it comes to South Africa, they don't want you to hear about this security issue because there are people who are undocumented here in South Africa. And the moment they see that, okay, you can do as you please here, you can even bribe the police, you can bribe everybody else, then they will bring their brothers and sisters so that they can come here undocumented. Then right now, we have a problem of human trafficking when it comes to security. We have a problem of people who are selling powder. You have to understand that the selling of powder is the destruction of your children, is the destruction of the South African future, South African children. So what do you expect people to do? Obvious, people will be frustrated, and their expression of their frustration won't be nice. That is why right now, as we speak, the South Africans are taking over. They are the ones now who are leading the government. Because if the government was in charge, if the government was following the procedure, then everything would be smooth. But because the government doesn't want to follow the procedure, the government doesn't want to follow the constitution, the government doesn't want to do the right thing, that is why the community is taking over. And you have to understand that the frustrated community will never follow any procedure. But that frustration, according to everybody else, it has to be labeled as xenophobia, so that the whole world can sympathize with them. But here we have a problem of security which no country in this world will tolerate. The security that we are talking about, we are talking about someone who is not documented. For an example, right now, it can be very difficult for even the police to investigate, even the experts when it comes to investigation. It will be very difficult for them to investigate a case of someone who is undocumented. For an example, let's say this person comes into your house and steals something or murders someone. How will the police get that person? How will the police arrest that person? Because whenever they take the fingerprints and everything, they won't be able to trace that person. Then the investigation becomes difficult to impossible. This is what is happening. We are talking about the security. They don't want you to hear about this issue of security. Why? Because they are taking advantage. They want you to sympathize. That is why they're not talking about all these things. They're not talking about the selling of powder. As I've said, the selling of powder is the destruction of our future. How many children who are suffering from all these substances? Because first of all, you have to understand that a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 10-year-old can't resist anything. Can't resist anything. You're not like maybe a 25-year-old who can say, okay, I can make right decisions in my life. In other words, the experience is completely different. And these are the things that we need to understand. So you cannot say, maybe when I was 13, when I was 12, I made right decisions, so my life was perfect. You cannot say that. It's just that you were fortunate. Just that you were fortunate. If you are a 10-year-old, you cannot resist anything. So that is why even now we have 40-year-olds who are addicted to something. Who are addicted to something. Why? Because it's not easy. Life in general is not easy. So how do you expect a 10-year-old to make right decisions? That is why they have to be protected. They have to be protected by who? By the government. Because the parents can try to protect, but if the government is reckless, then it means they have a high possibility to become the victims of this powder. And this powder is distributed or sold by people who are not documented or people who are from other countries. Yes, we have other distributors who are South Africans, but we can easily get hold of those people and be arrested. But if you are not documented, how can we handle? How can we handle you? Even if you are documented, you can still run away. You can still bribe people and take advantage of our corrupt systems. Because right now we have a problem of corrupt home affairs. In other words, from provinces, from all these local branches towards the head office, everybody is corrupt. We have giants who are like benefiting from this whole thing. How do you expect South Africans to react? If they complain to the government and say, please fix this. We have a problem of this. We have a problem. We have, for an example, if you have a problem of like human trafficking that is happening maybe once a year, then people may forget about it. People may forget about it. But if now it's happening every week it's happening. And people who are involved in all these things are people from outside. Some are not even documented. And some are proud that even though they are not documented, they can still roam around. Why? Because they can bribe. How do you expect the society to react? Obvious, the frustration will grow bigger because these incidences are now happening frequently than ever before. That is why we are where we are. But they don't want you to talk about those things. They want you to focus on, oh, these people are chasing our brothers away. This is what is happening. They want you to focus on that so that you can sympathize. Why? Because where there's no truth, it's easy to sympathize because you don't have the other side of the story. In other words, you cannot hold anyone accountable. Or the person you're supposed to be holding accountable can't like present his side of the story. This is what is happening. African unity is just a bit impossible. As long as we don't like the truth, honesty, and accountability. These are the things that we need to learn. You should not sabotage me just because yesterday I asked you, like for an example, to correct yourself. Now today you want to sabotage me because yesterday I held you accountable based on something. So today you want to react in a certain way because you want to retaliate to me because you were offended. This is what is happening. This is what is happening. As long as we hate accountability and all these things, we are going to have a problem. And the other thing that they don't want to talk about, again, is the issue when it comes to small businesses, such as tuck shops or spaza shops, saloons, and all these other small businesses. When we talk about township economy, forget about the politicians, because we are where we are because of the politicians. Let's put politicians aside, but now let's talk about the Constitution. What is it that the Constitution is saying? The Constitution is actually saying when it comes to townships economy, they are reserved for South Africans. In other words, if you come from other countries, you have to have an investment of approximately 5 million or 5 million and above. In other words, you have to compete in, like for an example, in larger businesses or medium to larger businesses. This is where you need to compete, not in township economies. In other words, you have to invest that that amount of money, and then on top of that, you have to employ South Africans. In other words, the majority of the employees, 60 to 70%, should be South Africans. They don't want you to talk about that. That the Constitution states it clearly. So in other words, if we see these people running tuck shops, spaza shops, and all these other things, in other words, someone is not following the Constitution. And the occupier of these businesses is proud. Why? Because he or she can bribe someone who is bribable. Because South Africa is corrupt. The departments are corrupt. Traffic department is number one when it comes to corruption. Home Affairs is excelling when it comes to corruption. And other departments such as labor and many others, everybody is corrupt. But if I'm the manager or I'm the director of the department, I'm the head of the department, I can easily get rid of the corruption. So this is a sign. This is a sign that corruption comes from above. That is why our people are frustrated. That is why everybody is frustrated, because we have a problem of high unemployment rate. Now, even our spaza shops are going away. We are not allowed to participate in our large economy. We are not allowed because of the system. But now you even take away what the Constitution has reserved for us, which is small businesses. What do you expect us to do? What do you expect us to do? Then they will say, you fear other races. This is what they will say. Why? Because they don't want the truth, accountability, and honesty. They don't want that. So that is why they have to come up with all these other reasons in order to run away from these other reasons. This is what is happening. They want the whole world to sympathize with them. They want the whole world to sympathize with them because they want to run away from the truth. So when it comes to small businesses, in other words, if you are from outside, if you come to South Africa, you have to know that you have to invest a certain amount and you have to provide employment. In other words, the Constitution is like, we have to secure employment for South Africans, and we have to secure their businesses as well, small businesses, those township economies, because nothing was done after 1994 to bring about empowerment. Nothing was done. So that is why now South Africans are frustrated. They are like, you cannot even take what belongs to us according to the Constitution. Why? Because they are blocked. Even if when it comes to like the larger economies, the majority of the country, they have to control everything. They have to control the majority of the thing, from township economies to the larger parts of the economy. But we have corrupt leaders. They call themselves Pan-Africanists. They're in control. They're in charge of everything. They are in leadership. They manipulate. They manipulate our minds because they tell us, vote for us, and we trust them. But this time, it's just a bit different because people are now aware that these guys are not that good. That is why I always say politics is a scam. And the other thing that they don't want us to talk about, or they don't want to talk about when it comes to employment. When it comes, they are just ready to say, how many people have you employed after a certain number has left South Africa? They just want to confuse you. They just want you to like create something that won't even add up in your mind. But here's the thing. When it comes to employment, the Constitution states it clearly that if you come here to South Africa and you need a work permit, you have to come here with an advanced skill, the skill that is rare, or the skill that is rarely found amongst South Africans. Then you qualify to get a work permit or a work visa. In other words, you cannot just come here and become, like for an example, a truck driver or a taxi driver or a cashier or a general labor when it comes to construction or a petrol attendant. You cannot just come here. You cannot just come here and become, like for an example, an ordinary plumber. You cannot just come here and become, like for an example, an ordinary electrician or a mechanic. You cannot. You cannot. Why? The Constitution is securing employment for those South Africans who won't be able to run businesses or who won't be able to attain advanced skills or maybe advanced qualifications such as masters or PhD and etc. So that is why the Constitution is securing those vacancies for the people so that the economy can run smoothly. Because not everybody can run spaza shops. And not everybody can also become like run large businesses and become billionaires and multimillionaires. And not everybody can get a degree or a diploma or for an example, master's or PhD. It's not everybody. So that is why everybody has to be accommodated. Then once they've been accommodated, the Constitution says, now if you have a rare skill, then you can come to the country as an investment. If you have an advanced business plan, or maybe you have an amount of approximately 5 million that you can invest here in South Africa, we welcome you because we already know that you won't be competing with township economies. You won't be disturbing those people who are running saloons and barber shops. This is the Constitution protecting ordinary South Africans. I may not agree with other things in that Constitution because I want it to be changed in our favor as well. But right now, the Constitution is still protecting South Africans to say, you know what, when it comes to that spaza shop, you are protected. Run those spaza shops. You should not be disturbed by anyone. Even when it comes to employment, you should not be disturbed by anyone. But here's the thing. We have a problem of corrupt government officials. We have a problem of corrupt companies. So these companies, they are taking advantage. These companies, they are taking advantage. They have this tendency now of retrenching South Africans. And now they go and employ people who are not documented, because they know that if they can retrench one South African, then they can employ someone, even if they are documented or not documented, they can employ them and they can hire 4. By just retrenching one employee, they can hire 4. In other words, with a salary of 1, they can pay 4 people, not because they love these people. How can a colonizer love you? Because most of these industries are run by colonizers. So how do you expect them to, like, for an example, love you? They don't love you, but they want you to work hard for nothing. For nothing. So are these people our brothers and sisters who are working hand in hand with the colonizer in order to sabotage us? Absolutely not. If you use logic, they don't want us to talk about these things. So that is why they are ready to just retaliate so that we can get offended. But here are the reasons. If you love Pan-Africanism, if you love African unity, if you love all these things, the foundation is truth, accountability, honesty. In other words, we have to hold one another accountable. So now we have a problem, because now these companies have realized that by retrenching South Africans, they are making money. So now they have this reason of providing false, like for an example, they have this tendency of providing false reasons why they are retrenching people. They'll be like, the company has lost assets. The company is in debt, or the company can no longer afford to pay its liabilities. Something like that. In other words, they will make those excuses. And they'll get away with it. This is the problem that South Africans are facing right now as we speak. And the moment South Africans decide to take that particular company to court or something like that, to those commissions, something like that, these guys are ready to bribe. These guys are ready to bribe. So that is why in most cases, these companies will win. That is why if I'm an inspector as well, I'm going to inspect these companies. Even my intentions of inspecting are not even legit. I'm only looking for a brown envelope. I'm only looking for a brown envelope. This is what is happening. So that is why these companies now, they are like, bring your brothers and sisters from those countries. Bring them. They retrench among South Africans. What is happening? Then unemployment will go up. When you use logic, simple logic, then you will realize that high unemployment rate is also affected. Is not only affected by undocumented, but is also affected if you use logic. But politicians will say no. Why? Because, politicians, they have their own interests. They have their own interests. Just for an example, in 1994, they had their own interest. It's not like they made a mistake. They didn't make any mistake. They had their own interests. African unity is a beautiful dream, but it's impossible. Why? Because these countries, some of them, when it comes to independence, their independence is about 50 years. Some of them, their independence is 60 years right now. They're supposed to be teaching South Africa when it comes to economy. They're supposed to be leading South Africa when it comes to economy. But now they are like, no, South Africans should go back to their country if they're in Ghana, if they're maybe somewhere in other countries. But I believe that those South Africans who are there, they are there legitimately so. Not because they cannot commit crime, not because they cannot make mistakes, but I trust the laws in those countries that they cannot just get away like that and go free, unpunished. It's impossible. So this is what we want here in South Africa before we can even talk about African unity. So in the meantime, each and every country has to try by all means to deal with its problems. They have to unite amongst themselves first. Then the moment we come together, we are like, yeah. But for now, it is just a bit impossible. People who love honesty, truth, and accountability are not born yet.
If everything can be paused, I will ask the spiritual court to put death on hold so we can have time to breathe. And the rain of tears shall stop.
I have an appeal to the Supreme Court of Justice and Truth. Your mediation is necessary. Pause everything for a moment.